My name is Dwayne Shoemate, and I'm the Coordinator of Employment Community Engagement for the Division of Developmental Disabilities. And also joining me today as one of the panelists is Rachel Matheny, who is our research analyst that is in charge of the REDCap database system. I will be doing the full presentation, but if we do have any technical issues, Rachel will be here to support. So again, today's presentation is on the data collection for the employment pay for reporting portion of value-based payments. There was a full training yesterday on the other 8 initiatives. There'll be a reprisal of that training again next week. But for the employment pay for reporting, there is a lot of additional information that REDCap serves as the primary data collection source. So we do have a separate training just to showcase that particular piece. This particular training will be reprised again next week. And at the end of today's presentation, will be a hyperlink and details for that reprisal. So our agenda today, initially what we'll be doing is an introduction to REDCap. Then we'll talk about how provider agencies can go about getting access to the REDCap data collection system. We'll review some just navigation and tips about the REDCap site. Then we will get into just a real quick high-level overview of the employment pay for reporting and what the screens will look like in REDCap. After that, we will take a opportunity to do a deeper dive into a live demonstration of the REDCap site. We will then review kind of the provider contract information associated with this particular value-based payment initiative. And then we will talk about the data collection timeline for the reports that will be getting collected. And then lastly, we will share some hyperlinks of resources about REDCap and value-based payments. So in getting us started, REDCap is simply an online data collection tool. So the information that's going to be entered into REDCap is the data metrics that have been identified to be collected for the employment pay for reporting. So it is a secure website. Users will request, or excuse me, providers will request user access. And once they have user access, they will have a unique password as well as user ID. Individuals will be able to go in and continue to build upon the reports each quarter. So it does save information from quarter to quarter. Again, it's accessible through tablets, smartphones, as well as any desktop computer. So to begin, when requesting user access, you can accomplish that by either selecting the hyperlink in this presentation, which will be made available upon completion of today's webinar, or you can scan in the QR code that you see on the screen currently. Whenever you select that hyperlink or visit that QR code, the screen on the right will appear. And in that screen, simply what you will do is indicate your first name and last name, your email address, and then your job title. And at that point in time, Rachel will then be sending back to you information on creating your user account. Once you have a user account, a hyperlink will be provided to you, the one at the top of the screen here to log in. When you click that hyperlink, it'll open up the REDCap site, and you'll get a screen page that will identify home and then my projects. When you select my projects, each of the value-based payment incentives will appear on the screen, which is outlined here in number 2. And today we'll be talking about the employment pay for reporting. And so you can see in this example that it is the second line on the screen, and that you would simply select that hyperlink and it would take you into the employment pay for reporting database. And again, we will do a live demo of this about midway through today's webinar. Once you're in the REDCap site and you've selected the employment pay for reporting, on the left side of the screen, there is the simple direction to add or edit records. You'll select add or edit records when updating new information or on new individuals. When you just click add new record, you'll then get a screen that will identify the different reporting time periods, your provider information about the individual themselves, and then a area for provider attestation and provider review. Again, we will review these in greater detail and actually do a live demo where we create a test account. On each of the slides, excuse me, on each of the websites also, in the provider information, providers will be selecting their name, their Medicaid 85 number. Whoever is entering the information in would type in their contact information. And then once they've completed entering information, they would mark the box as complete. Again, we'll be demoing this shortly for everyone. Whenever there's the need to edit records, if you've uploaded, let's say, a pay for reporting on an individual by the name of Fred Flintstone, you realize that you forgot to add certain information, you can go back in and edit that record during the open reporting period simply by selecting Add Edit Records again. There will be an option to say, are you wanting to choose an existing record? If so, you'll just click that drop down, find the individual's name, select that individual's name, and then you're back into the screen where you can edit the information. A couple of tips for REDCap. We have only been testing this using Edge and Chrome. It is definitely the preferred browsers. There are training videos on accessing REDCap that can be accessed through the hyperlinks that you see on the screen. And then whenever you've been completing information in REDCap and you've marked it as complete, you will get a green light indicating that it has been completed and it's ready to go forward for review by the Department of Mental Health. If you have not completed all fields of the pay for reporting, or if you have not marked it as complete, it will continue to appear as red, meaning it's incomplete, and additional information would need to be completed. There are some provider agencies, especially those who are larger, that may want to have internal staff review and verify before records are submitted as fully complete. There is a feature in REDCap where you can initially enter information, mark it as unverified, then another user from your agency could go in, view each of the unverified entries, review them for accuracy of completion, and then they would be the ones who would mark complete. So there is the red, yellow, green light features that may be helpful for some provider agencies. So again, when we talk about employment pay for reporting, I know we've done several presentations on our value-based payment initiatives. The employment pay for reporting is just one of 9 different value-based payment opportunities. The employment reporting is available to any contracted employment service provider who's delivering career planning, job development, benefits planning, pre-vocational, and or supporting employment services. For those providers who choose to go in each quarter, they can enter in the individuals that they're working with for each service code in which the individual had billable activity, complete the data elements that we'll be sharing, and then submitting that report as complete. Those reports will be used for future benchmarking as we continue to transition the employment services over from a quarter-hour unit of service eventually to either a milestone or outcome payment system. So the pay for reporting is enabling us to collect the data we need for future rate methodology to justify those future milestone and outcome payments. So again, each quarter, a provider who has an individual receiving one of those 5 employment services would simply go into the REDCap system, enter in information about that specific individual attached to their DMH ID, answer the questions associated with the service which the individual received, mark it as complete, and at that point in time, then a $55 incentive payment would be provided for the completion of that report. It is important to note that there is the incentive payment available for each DMH ID and for each procedure code that an individual receives. So for example, if an individual was receiving 3 employment services within a quarter, for example, let's say they were receiving career planning, benefits planning, and they may also be doing a little bit of pre-vocational activity, the provider would be able to go in and enter a report specifically for benefits planning a report specifically for career planning, and a report specifically for pre-vocational in that example for the same individual. So in that circumstance, they would be eligible for $165 of incentive payment. If you have 10 individuals who are receiving a collective 30 services, then that would be 30 times $55 each quarter for completion of the reporting. And again, all the reporting is fully done in the REDCap system. All right, so again, this is just a quick screenshot for the employment pay for reporting. What you can see here at the bottom of the page is where it does talk about or identify the provider information, the DMHID, benefits planning, career planning, job development, pre-vocational services, support employment additional employers if applicable, and then the DMH review. So once you've created a user account and you begin to add an individual, this is the screen that will appear. The first thing that the provider would do is select the bullet identifying provider information, so then they can begin to add their information. Once the provider information has been added, then there will be the option to select DMHID, and the individual's information will then be uploaded in that section. And then you would select whichever one of the services the individual has received for the quarter in which you're reporting. One of the things that we will be doing when we open this REDCap site on January 17th is providers will be able to go back and report data elements for quarter one, which would be July 1st to September 30th of 2022. They'll be able to go in and enter a separate report for October 1st to December 31st of 2022 as well. So this initial opening of the REDCap site, providers will be able to enter 2 quarters of information and receive $55 for each of those reports that have been entered. So in this example, if a person was receiving benefits planning both those quarters, the provider would be eligible for a $55 payment for the benefits planning data elements shared for quarter one, as well as another $55 payment for the data elements shared in quarter two. In future quarters, you will only be able to do reporting on the immediately preceding quarter. So this first opening of the portal, which will occur on January 17th, is the only time that you will be able to go back and enter in 2 quarters worth of reports. After this portal closes this quarter, in the future, you would only be able to report the most recent quarter's worth of data. Okay, so in the provider information, if we were to select that button on the previous screen, you can see simply it's going to ask for the provider's name, their Medicaid 85 number, as well as the contact name of the person who is completing the data, that individual's phone number, and then that individual's email address. Once that's completed, you will just simply choose the drop-down menu and move it from incomplete to complete, and then save and exit form. When you've completed that, you'll then have the opportunity to upload each individual with whom you're working with. What you will do is go in and enter each individual's DMHID, that individual's first name and last name, and then you'll mark complete. If you have multiple individuals to enter, then you will select the save and stay, and it'll give you the opportunity to upload as many individual IDs as you may be working with. Okay, so in this example here, we have gone in and completed the initial provider information as well as the DMHID on an individual. So once that's done on this particular screen, this is a snapshot showing that the individual's DMHID is to the left side of the screen. It's indicating that it's green light, that all information was completed on the provider information, and all information was completed specific to that DMHID, that individual's information. Then at this point in time, you'd be going and clicking whichever service you're going to be completing the report for whichever quarter you're completing that report. So if you were completing career planning for quarter one of fiscal year 23, which would be July 1st to September 30th, you'd be clicking that very first benefits planning box. If you were doing it for subsequent quarters, you would go to that particular quarters and select the service for which you're completing the report on. Again, the legends at the top of the screen to let you know that red means incomplete, yellow means unverified, and green means that you have completed all the data that is necessary. So if you were to select benefits planning, it will then take you into a series of data selection questions about benefits planning. The first question in every of the reporting fields is, has the individual ended that particular service? So if they have ended the service, meaning they've successfully completed it, or they've terminated the service, if they have ended it, you would select yes. If the individual is continuing to receive that service and will be throughout the next quarter, then that means they've not ended the service yet, and you would select no. Based upon the yes and no questions, there will be additional questions that will pop up. And again, we will review those in the live demo. So ultimately, you're just initially asked, has the individual ended the service or not? You'll see there is a note here at the bottom that says yes. If the individual has successfully or unsuccessfully completed the service, select no if the individual is still receiving the service. If you select the wrong answer, there's also the opportunity to reset that answer on the right-hand side of the screen, where you see in blue writing the word reset. So you'll answer that question, and then you will go through and answer the additional questions that appear. Once all the information's been entered, there's an opportunity to do the provider attestation. You'll type in the name of the person completing the record, their first name and last name, the date that you're submitting the record, and then there is a green box that says add signature. When you click that, a pop-up window will pop up. You just electronically add a signature, and then once that's done, you just mark the box as complete. And at that point in time, the benefits planning report has been completed for that individual for that particular reporting period. Career planning, if that was the service that you were entering, again, you would select career planning off the home page. It's going to, again, ask if the individual has completed the service or not. The same note guiding you on when to select yes or when to select no. Again, there will be a series of questions that one will answer, and then they will get down eventually to that screen on the provider attestation. Job development, again, very similar. You can see answering yes or no, the date the service started, some additional questions which we'll review in greater detail. And then you can see here for job development that there is additional information that's being collected that was not being collected for career planning or benefits planning. Pre-vocational services, this is the screen that will initially appear in that particular service. Again, starting off with the yes/no question on completion of the service, start date, and then you begin to get specific questions about pre-vocational services. I do see a question in the chat box, and the question is this available for employment services that are receiving funding from vocational rehabilitation? And that is an excellent question, and the answer is no. This data collection is only for services being billed through the Medicaid waivers. So anybody who is receiving employment programming through voc rehab or straight through county board dollars or workforce agencies or other programs, those individuals would not be eligible for this reporting or the $55 report. This is specific only to the delivery of waiver-funded employment services. I also see another question clarifying units delivered, and we will address that question once we get into the live demo. Hey, as we move on to the next service, supported employment, again, same first question as the individual, or excuse me, on this one is, do you have additional employers to enter for this information? Yes or no? If an individual is working at multiple jobs, then it will open up multiple screens to where you can report on each individual employer with whom the individual is working and whom services are being delivered. So again, the support employment screen, again, has a little bit different information than what you've seen on the previous screens. All right, so now we will switch over and do the live demonstration, if I can do this accurately. All right, and Kat, can you confirm for me, are we seeing the red cap login screen?
We are. Yes.
Okay. Excuse me for taking a drink there, but I've been fighting a sore throat and I'm doing a lot of talking here. So once you've created a access account, which again is by scanning that QR code or selecting the hyperlink that we reviewed earlier in the screen or earlier in the presentation, Rachel will then email you your username and then a link to get to RedCap. Once you've received that information, all you will do is type in your username, and then you'll type in the password that you've created. Okay, and if you've successfully entered your password and user ID, you get to this home screen. You might appear on this home screen, which just describes what the RedCap site is. But ultimately where you'll want to navigate to is My Projects. And so when you get to My Projects, this is the screen that I showed earlier where you can see each of the value-based payments which you may have requested to access to be able to enter information in for. In this example, I have access to multiple value-based payment initiatives. But again, this demo is specifically on the employment paid for reporting. The other thing I'll point out on this screen is you can see in the top right-hand corner that you are logged in and how you're logged in. And then if you need to log out, you have the ability to log out of the screen from there. So from here, we will select employment pay for reporting. And now we get to the screen that indicates that this instrument will be used by agencies for the value-based payment programs at the Department of Mental Health. Answers will be provided to the department for review and payment. On this screen, as we demonstrated earlier, all that you need to do is go to this red icon that says Add and Edit Records. And then you will get to the screen for you to begin to add new records. So if you're adding a new record, you will select the green Add New Record. If you're actually choosing to work on an existing record, you can select this drop down and go find an existing record and complete an update on that particular individual's report. But for this example, we will add a new record. And so you get the screen that identifies the information that will need to be completed. The first button that we need to select is provider information. And this is fiscal year 23 that we're currently in. Once I've selected provider information, I get this screen and I will go and select, it doesn't really matter. We'll choose Easy Living. You'll put in your provider's 85 number. This is a made up 85 number that I put in advance. And then you'll type in the contact name of the individual who is entering the information. I can't type my own name. All right, so I've entered my name there. I'm going to put in my phone number. This would be your real phone number. I'm just going to put in a dummy phone number here. And then you'll enter your email address and we will go with. So I've now put in my provider's name, the Medicaid 85 number for my provider. I've entered my name and phone number as well as my email address. So I'm now going to mark that as complete, and I'm going to save and exit the form. So now what that's done is you'll see the provider information is now green lighted, meaning that I've completed it. It's now given me the opportunity to enter my first individual's report because now the DMHID button has been made available. So let's say that I am entering information with a made up DMHID number here. You would type in the individual's actual DMHID number. We're going to go with Rocky as the individual's first name, and we'll put Pluto as the last name of the individual, and then we'll mark this as complete. So again, for each individual with whom you're working with, you would go in and enter a new DMH ID, a new individual report account. So in this particular individual, this individual's record ID number is 159. So when I've entered multiple of these from my home screen, I would now see the options to go in and work on each individual based upon their record ID. But working still within Rocky Pluto, after we entered his DMHID information, you see that light is now green, meaning we completed everything that we needed to. Now you'll see that I have the option to check each employment service for multiple reporting periods. So for Rocky, if we were delivering benefits planning from July to September 30th of 2022, I would select that particular button. And now I've got the option to go in and update information about benefits planning that was delivered between the months of July and the end of September. So the screen that we have here, and I'm going to try and enlarge this for you guys if I can. Hopefully it's better to see with. So what I'm going to do in this instance is we're going to select no, that the individual is still receiving it, so they've not ended it. So when I select no, it's going to ask service start date. You see the note here that says first date in which the billable activity occurred. And there's the opportunity to either manually type in the information or you can use the drop-down calendar. So what we're going to do is use the drop-down calendar and say that Rocky began receiving services on July 7th. And then the number of units of service that was delivered during the reporting period in which I'm reporting on. So again, I'm reporting on July through September. And so we'll say that Rocky had 23 units of service during that quarter. And then it's going to ask the number of cumulative units delivered during the service. So through that period of time, Rocky received 23 units of service. And we will also say that up through the end of September, including prior quarters, Rocky's now had a cumulative number of 46 units of service delivered. So at this point in time, this is all that I had to enter it for Rocky. I'm going to type in my name to attest that I've completed this, and this is accurate information to the best of my ability. And then I'm going to indicate today's the day that I'm submitting that data. And then I'm going to add my signature. I can do this. Save my signature. Say I'm complete and exit. So we've now completed our benefits planning pay for reporting report for July through September for Rocky, and I would now be eligible for $55. So let's go in for this example to the second quarter of last year, October 1st to December 30th. Now we're going to say that Rocky did complete the service. So Rocky ended up completing the service somewhere in the middle of October through December. So when I select yes, we now have some additional questions that were asked. So did the individual successfully finish the service? Choose yes if the outcome identifies the service definition. If the outcomes identifying the service definition were accomplished. So if Rocky successfully completed the service, he just didn't terminate the service or unsuccessfully finish it. If he did successfully finish it, we're going to say yes. And then it's going to ask us, the service start date and end date. Again, this is the first date in which billable activity occurred. From that previous example, I believe I said it was 7/7. The service ended. Let's say it ended in November. And we'll say it ended the week before Thanksgiving. Now I've entered the end date of the service, and you can see it's automatically calculated the number of days in which Rocky received benefits planning. He received it a combined 134 calendar days. We're going to enter the number of units for this reporting period. Again, currently we're reporting on 10/1 through 11/18. Let's say Rocky had an additional 40 units of service received this quarter. The cumulative units, last quarter we said it was 46. We've just added another 40 to it. So now Rocky has received 86 units of this service throughout the completion of the service. And now we're asked additional questions because if Rocky completed benefits planning, we would know what his monthly earnings goal is for employment. Let's say his earnings goal is $522. Is the individual currently employed? We're going to say no, that he's not. What actions were taken to verify his benefits as part of benefits planning? You're going to check all that are applicable. It's going to ask, was a benefits summary analysis completed? Yes or no? And the reason it asks this question is that is an outcome that is clearly delineated in the service definition as an expected outcome of the service. And then it's going to ask you whether a work incentive plan was completed. And again, hopefully you're answering yes, because it is a requirement of the service definition. But you'll answer the questions based upon that which is applicable. For Rocky, you're going to identify any work incentives that you reviewed with Rocky as part of benefits planning. And so let's check a couple here and say that we reviewed each of these with Rocky. That's going to say work incentives accessed. And I see we have a typo here. That should say accessed and not assessed. So these are the work incentives that were reviewed or recommended. And then this question is, what work incentives did Rocky actually access? So let's say that Rocky ended up using the student earned income exclusion. Was an ABLE account included in the recommendations? Yes or no? Service the individual will be transitioning to upon completion of the benefits planning. Let's say Rocky's going to career planning, that's waiver funded, but you can select each of the waiver funded services, or if Rocky's now moving over to vocational rehabilitation or another program, you would be selecting that program. And then lastly, it's going to ask if virtual delivery supports were used, approximately what percentage of the units that were delivered were used or delivered using virtual services. And so in this example, let's say that Rocky did all of this in person with the benefits planner, so we'll put 0. Again, there's no right or wrong answers on these questions. They're just what was specific to Rocky. And again, these should vary from individual to individual because each individual circumstances are differently. So now I'm going to type in my name again as the person completing the report. I'm going to put today as the date that I'm submitting it. I'm going to add my signature, mark the form as complete, and then save and exit. So now you'll see benefits planning is green lighted for both Q1 and Q2 of fiscal year 23. All right, I'm going to pause for just a second because I've not been able to see the chat box for a while. Do we have any questions, Kat, specific to the access to these forms or completing the forms?
Not that I can see, no.
All right, so we've now gone through and done benefits planning. Let's do a career planning example. We would select career planning. Again, we're going to ask the question, has the individual ended the service? And yes, if the individual successfully or unsuccessfully completed the service, no, if they're still receiving the service. So we're going to say that yes, in career planning, Rocky has now completed that service. Did the individually successfully finish the service? And in this instance, we will say no, that Rocky discontinued services and moved on to a different program. Again, we're going to be asked service start dates and end dates. Similar to before, we're going to be asked the number of units delivered for this reporting period, the cumulative units delivered during the entirety of the service. So you'll enter that information in. And then in career planning, we have these additional questions. These activities are each of the activities that are allowed within the service definition. So now what we're going to do is indicate during this quarter, how many times did we do community resource mapping with Rocky? And we may have had 2 instances where we completed that. It's going to be asked, were any community-based assessments completed that were paid where Rocky was compensated? And we're going to say there were none. But Rocky did do 4 community-based assessments where he went out, actually performed the job to get a better understanding of it. So there might have been 4 different jobs that Rocky did that at. We'll enter the number of days spent on that activity in this quarter. And let's say during that quarter, Rocky spent 22 days doing those 4 community-based assessments. It asks, did Rocky complete any discovery interviews? Sorry, I got my mouse flew off my desk. We'll say that we did 3 discovery not 43. We did 3 discovery interviews, and that took us 3 days to complete. And then it continues through other billable activities that are outlined in the service definition to include facility-based assessments, situational assessment, or facility-based assessment where Rocky did a vocational test. Were there any informational interviews that were done? Those would be interviews with potential employers. And that's different than discovery interviews, which are interviews with members who are familiar with Rocky. So discovery interview is an interview with a family member, a friend, a teacher, a neighbor, someone who Rocky might have gone to church with. Discovery interviews are those interviews you have with people who know an individual, so you have a better understanding of what their interest, skills, and abilities are. Whereas informational interviews are interviews with businesses in the community. You're going to indicate whether or not Rocky had any job shadowing that was completed, and then were there any other activities. So again, you'll count the number of events or times which this occurred, and then the cumulative amount of days that were spent on each of those activities. And we will, just for example purposes, we'll say that Rocky had 3 informational interviews, but we're going to forget to put in the number of days that were spent doing those. We'll move on. It'll be asked, well, will the individual be seeking competitive integrated employment? And we're saying yes. Do we have a theme identified of what Rocky might want to work on? We'll say that Rocky, we think right now, is maybe interested in groundskeeping and food service and hospitality. Because we did indicate up here that Rocky completed the program unsuccessfully, it's asking us what service will he be transitioning to since he completed unsuccessfhly. And he may be moving to any one of these services, or it could be, day habilitation that he's moving to, and it may be unknown. So we just identify, what we think that Rocky will be transitioning to. Because we indicated that he is still interested in work, we're still being asked, do we have an idea of his hourly wage, the number of hours being worked, any general employment support needs that he has. Again, if any of this was delivered virtually, what % of the services were delivered virtually? Was a job exploration interview and career planning profile completed upon terminating the program? And was an employment profile and job development plan completed upon completing the program. So you'll just go through and answer these questions. Again, there are a multitude of questions that follow business rules, depending upon whether you enter yes or no, or if he's completed it, whether he's successfully completed it. There will be a different set of questions that appear. So we can't go through all the possible permutations and combinations, but this is a general flavor of what would be asked in career planning. So you can see I purposely left some things undone. So I get an error saying I forgot to put in start date, end date, units delivered during the reporting period. So when you do forget to enter something, you are going to get an error notification. If you don't know that information currently, you can just say, okay. And it takes you back to where you can enter that information that you may have forgotten to enter. And then if I forget to go back and do the other stuff, it is going to ask me for a reason for change. Just put in the reason for why you changed it if you didn't fully complete it. Okay, and it's still telling me that I have additional stuff that I've failed to complete. If I do ignore and leave the record, you'll see that this is showing it's red, meaning it's not been completed. So in this instance, if it's not completed, then there would not be $55 available for completion of the report. The report has to be fully completed in order for the $55 incentive payment to be issued. So this is an example where I would need to go back in and complete all of the data in order for me to be eligible for that $55 report. So in job development, again, just giving a flavor of the questions that are being asked. We'll say that the individual has ended it, that he successfully ended it. You'll see again, what was the start date? Is the first billable date? What was the last date in which the billable activity occurred? When you put that information in, it'll automatically calculate the length of time in job development. Similar to before, you'll enter the number of units billed for the reporting period that you're completing, the cumulative units that have been billed for the individual. You're going to indicate the activities that you completed as part of job development, the number of applications submitted, employer meetings, employers contacted, job interviews, job trials, mock interviews, task analysis, video resumes, portfolios, or other activities. You'll count the number of times which you did any one of those activities and the number of days of which those were completed. So for example, a job shadow may end up, you may have only done one job shadow, but that job shadow may have been done across 5 days. So that's why we do ask both the number of events and the number of days in which that occurred. We will be completing a crosswalk that we'll make available to everybody for the operational definitions of these terms. Hopefully everybody's familiar with these terms as they are fairly standard national best practice terms when it comes to delivering benefits planning or career planning or job development or the other services. But we will create a crosswalk that we'll make available, and it'll be available on our value-based purchasing page to help you understand what the operational definition of each of those activities are. In this instance, because the individual did successfully finish job development, that means that they got a job because that's the ultimate successful completion of job development. If the individual's gotten a job, we're going to say yes. And now you can see it's going to ask, what is the job? We'll say that Rocky got a job at clerical. It's going to ask the number of hours scheduled of work per week. Let's say Rocky's working 12. What his hourly wage is, and let's say Rocky's making $12 an hour. It's going to ask, were there any employer benefits available? If there are none, then this would be left blank. Was job placement implementation plan completed? We'll say yes. Any support needs that Rocky's going to need on that job? We're going to say needs job coaching and transportation. And then how many units of the job development was delivered using virtual delivery? And we'll say in this instance, None of it was done virtually. Then again, we'll type in our name, we'll do our submission date, we'll add our signature, mark complete, and then that form would be done. And I'm going to get the error because I've not completed everything. That's okay, because for the example today, I think folks are beginning to understand how each of these work. So again, you'll see that that's red because we had stuff that we still need to go in and complete. Pre-vocational, just a quick overview to kind of get an idea of the type of information being asked in pre-vocational. We got the same question again: if they've ended the service, did they successfully complete the service start date, end date. This time it's being asked, what type of pre-vocational services were delivered. This is our first opportunity to have a service that would be done either individually or group or both. So you'll select whichever is applicable there. Again, ask the number of units provided in community-based activities, how many units were provided within the facility, the total number of units delivered, and then the number of service units delivered for the service to be fully completed. So in pre-vocational, we get the virtual delivery question again. In pre-vocational, it's going to be asking this information, which are what skills are being developed. So if Rocky's still actively receiving pre-vocational or if he's completed, the provider would be indicating what skills are that are being developed in pre-vocational. So the options of skills being developed are accepting feedback, skills around attendance punctuality, communication skills, following directions, grooming and hygiene, mobility and motor skill training, social skills, task performance, workplace protocols such as clocking in, clocking out, understanding one's chain of command, supervisors, how to do leave requests, or maybe the skill being developed was workplace safety. And then there's the ever popular other, and you can type in what the skill is that you're developing as part of pre-vocational. So whenever you select a skill that you're developing, you're going to indicate what the baseline is. And for Rocky, let's say that it's a developing skill. That means he's able to demonstrate appropriate acceptance of feedback 26 to 50% of the time when he started the service. During the current reporting period, you're going to indicate where that skill is currently at. So let's say he's moved from developing the skill to beginning to demonstrate it 51 to 75% of the time. And then what is the target? And let's say for Rocky, we don't expect him to ever have this fully developed without supports. And so ultimately, we're just wanting Rocky to be able to accept feedback 76 to 99% of the time. So again, we're identifying the skill that you're working on in pre-vocational, what the original baseline was, what the current threshold is during the reporting period, and then what is the target threshold. Hopefully this isn't new to people delivering pre-vocational, because this is the level of expectation we've had in the service definitions for over a year now, of identifying the skill, what the baseline behavior is, the current threshold, and what the targeted threshold is. So this is all information that should be being collected already, but if not, this form will really help you in really operationalizing what those skills are and what types of progress are you needing to see Rocky to be successful. So you'll indicate each of those areas. Then at the bottom, it's going to ask, will the individual be continuing in other employment services? And if we say yes, it's going to ask, now that he's completed pre-vocational, what is he moving to? And we'll say he's moving to job development. And in job development, he's going to need assistance with employer development, and he's going to need some job interview assistance. So we're just going to indicate what those supports are. If we know what his desired hourly wage is, we'll enter that value. Maybe Rocky's desiring to earn $13.50, 10 hours a week. Just put that information in, and then ultimately, what is the job that Rocky would be performing as he leaves pre-vocational services. So then we're back to the provider attestation again, and then the signature. And again, we'll get some errors, but that's okay. Because again, at least we've kind of demonstrated the type of information that'll be asked as part of pre-vocational. So then our last service that we will demo is support employment. And let's say we're doing support employment for the Q2. In support employment, we're going to be asked whether there's additional employers. We're going to say no in this example. What type of support employment is being delivered, whether it's group, individual, or if the individual is receiving both. In this example, we'll say that Rocky is receiving individual support employment. You're going to enter the name of the employer. Let's say Rocky is working at Aldi's. Has the individual ended employment? In this example, we'll say no. And when we clicked no, you saw other questions appear here. If we reset this, those questions disappear. Has the individual ended employment? Now, if we select yes, you'll see that there's another set of questions that appear. So again, there is business logic based upon the questions, the way you answer the questions, and the type of information that we'll be collecting. So if the individuals, if the employment has not ended, we'd select no. This is the start date of employment. Let's say Rocky started in this example, let's say he started in August 1st. Date employment supports began. Maybe Rocky had to go to work for 2 days without a job coach. So let's put 8/3 as when job coaching started. Then it's going to ask again the number of units delivered during this period. And we'll say he's had 200 units of job coaching. Was benefits assistance provided during the reporting period? We'll say no, Rocky didn't have any. Were there any employer benefits at the time of reporting period? Let's say that he did receive paid sick leave. We'll put in Rocky's current wage. Let's say Rocky's now making $13.75. That there was a wage increase during the quarter. And then the total number of hours worked for this reporting period by the individual. And let's say Rocky worked during this 3-month period. Let's say he worked 300 hours and that staff was available job coaching 280 of those 300 hours. Now it's going to calculate what the percent of job coaching is. And you can see here that Rocky is getting 93% of his work hours, work days are supported with a job coach. So similar to pre-vocational, when it comes to supporting individuals in the job, there's identification of what skills are you developing, why the job coach is there. So we've got a set of skills that are being developed. Those include accepting feedback, attendance punctuality, attention to detail, following directions, individual responsibility. Job coaching could be working on job performance, prioritizing job tasks, resolving conflict, self-advocating, and maybe working on workplace protocols, workplace safety, or others. So again, each of these either need to be answered yes or no on whether they're being developed. If you select yes, what is the baseline that Rocky started with? Let's say Rocky started with having no ability to accept feedback and that there were behaviors that occurred anytime he received feedback. But now, after we've been providing job coaching, let's say that he is developing that skill because now he's demonstrating the ability to accept feedback 26 to 50% of the time in which feedback occurs. And that our desired threshold is that this gets fully developed with supports. Again, whether it's natural supports or if we feel like he should be able to do this without any supports as our target, then that would be identified. Again, no right or wrong answers. It's just whatever whatever's Rocky demonstrates the capacity to develop to would be the targeted threshold. And then it's asking what type of fitting strategies are occurring to help Rocky be able to do this more on his own without a paid support. And so funding strategies may be increasing use of natural supports and decreasing the use of the job coach in providing the feedback. But whichever is applicable, you would check. And then you would do the same thing for each one of these skills. If it's not something being developed, you just select no. If it is something being developed, you select yes and identify the baseline, the current threshold, and what the desired threshold is, and how is fading or ongoing support being coordinated. And in attention to detail, we'll say that we're developing an accommodation. It might be pictures or an app that Rocky's going to use that will remind him what a well-completed product should look like. To go through and complete this for each of the areas that are being worked on and developed. Then at the bottom here, we're asked, is the individual satisfied with the total number of hours he's getting? Is he satisfied with his wage, his work schedule, and the work setting? If you answer no to any one of these, that's fine. We just need to know, does Rocky like his hours, his wages, work schedule, work setting? And then will the individual be continuing in other employment services beyond support employment? Let's say Rocky's beginning to not like this job. So now maybe we are going to go back and do some career exploration again, because now we've realized Rocky may be not interested in the job at Aldi's and he's looking for something else. So if there is the need to be looking at other supports, you'll indicate what those other supports might be. And if Rocky is going to be transitioning away, you can identify what service will he be transitioning to. Okay. Complete the attestation, mark it as complete, and then save and exit. And again, I'm getting the errors because I didn't complete it all, but that is the type of information. If the individual is working more than one job, then you would be asked an additional support employment report for each job, and you would be paid $55 for each individual report. Ultimately, when these are all green and completed, what will happen is the reporting period would close, and then a reviewer from the Department of Mental Health will go in and review each entry to ensure that information's been entered accurately, that it makes sense, it follows business logic, and if all's been completed, that reviewer will then mark it as accepted. So if, for example, someone said that Rocky was working 1 million hours in a quarter, that's an instance where the DMH reviewer would probably reject that report, send it back to the provider and say, you've entered in a number that seems implausible that an individual would be working. The reason we want to ensure validity in the data is, as we noted at the beginning, all of this information is being collected, so that way we can begin to move from a quarter-hour unit of service to eventually paying a flat amount for career planning, a flat amount for job development, pre-vocational, that would include milestones and outcome payments. So all this information is being collected so we can just get an understanding of how much support is being provided, what type of support, what type of progress, how long is it taking the individual, so that way, after we have about a year's worth of data, we can begin to sit down with actuaries and identify what are the average amounts of time that it's taking. Did doing discovery interviews lead to higher retention of employment, things like that. So we'll be looking at all those data metrics across a year to 2 years to establish future incentive payments, as well as to justify certain milestone payments and outcome payments. All right, so I am going to stop sharing that screen and we will jump back over to the PowerPoint. And Kat, am I sharing the PowerPoint again?
Yes.
Thank you. So that's the red cap site. The contract language for enabling us to pay the $55 per report, per DMHID, per procedure code. That language has been added to the provider contract. It's currently out there for review. And again, in the contract, it talks about that $55 will be paid for each report, for each individual, for each service that they're receiving, and that the qualified services are the 5 employment support services. So today was the first of these webinars. We will be repeating this exact same session next Thursday at 11 o'clock. The registration link will be in this PowerPoint. You'll be able to access this PowerPoint from the division's website. And I believe Kat will probably be putting that in the chat box of where you access that at. Couple other pieces of information before we conclude. The Red Cap site will open on January 17th. That's when individuals can begin requesting user access codes to be able to go in and enter information. This first reporting period, the portal will remain open for 45 days. So there'll be 45 days to go back, enter in each individual that you may be working with for each service, for each quarter, to ensure that you got adequate time to go and complete each of that information. Again, for this first reporting period, you are able to enter in information from the July 1st through August 30th, or excuse me, September 30th reporting period. And then you can also enter a separate report for October 1st through December 31st. In the future, the reporting period will always open the day after a reporting period closes, and it'll remain open until the 15th of the second month of that quarter. So for example, in the future, the reporting period of January 1st through January 30th, that reporting period, and actually this is a monthly report. So let's go to quarterly. Let's go to the second one. So for the next quarter of January 1st through March 30th, the database would open up on April 1st, and then it would close June 15th. So there's always going to be adequate time to be able to enter in information to ensure that you had opportunity to do all your documentation, collect the records, and then be able to go in and enter the records. Again, once the records are locked, there's no additional changes that would be accepted. And again, after this first reporting period, you will only be able to go back to the prior quarter to do reporting. The provider contracts have been and will be distributed from the provider relations teams to the providers for review. If there's any questions on the contract language itself, those should be emailed to the division mailbox at ddmail@dmh.mo.gov with the subject line of VBP provider contract. And again, no incentive payments will be made until the contract has been signed by the provider to indicating their acceptance of the additional opportunity to access incentive payments. Okay, any emails about or questions that you may have about the pay for reporting for employment reporting, those can be sent also to the DD mailbox at ddmail@dmh.mo.gov. If you have just questions about the red cap reporting information in today's presentation, please put the subject line of VBP data collection. And with that, we are through. So let me stop sharing my screen. and see if we have questions that we can answer. Okay, so on the question about number of cumulative units delivered during service, can you clarify? Hopefully, I think we maybe got that question clarified, Britton, through the demo, but it's there's the number of units for that particular quarter only. And then the cumulative units would be the units delivered for that quarter as well as any prior quarter. So if you're reporting for the July through September reporting period, you would enter the number of units delivered during that reporting period, as well as any units that you had billed prior to that reporting period. If you're reporting for the the October through December period, the number of units for that reporting period would be just the units during that quarter. And then the cumulative units would be anything that had been delivered prior to October 1st. And the reason we have that is because, some individuals may have been receiving these services prior to July 1st of last year. Again, I think there was a question about the quarter period. So within each example, when you go in and select, you'll choose the quarter period. On those columns, there was a date that shows quarter either being July 1st to September 30th or October 1st through December 31st, or January 1st through March 31st, or April 1st through June 30th. So the quarter period for each report is outlined when you select for which quarter that you're reporting on. Richard asked the question of, once it's completed and submitted, how will we know if it's been approved? On that screen at the DMH reviewer, you can always go back in, view your account, and it will show that DMH reviewer as green light, which will indicate that it has been paid. There will also be additional communication that'll be submitted and sent, also to notify you that it's been accepted. The question on how soon will it be paid, that's a question that we'll add to the FAQ list for others here at the division. Let's see if I can see someone asking for the original QR code. Let's bring that up.
Hey, Dwayne, this is Rachel. Just to add on the notification process, we will be setting up notifications and alerts through RedCap for every step. So they said no along the way, if it's in review, if it's been approved, and all of those steps.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. All right, so this is the link. It's https://redcap.link/dmh.vbp, or you can access this PowerPoint from the division's website and select that link there. And that's where you'll go about requesting having a user access. Or you can scan the QR code with your phone that's on the screen currently, and that QR code should be active. And I'm going to look at other chat questions. Britton asked, will you have to enter ID information each time, or will they be saved? Let me go back and show another screen here. So what you will see is from the dashboard, those are saved. So you can always go back in and work within that person's same report. So here's Rocky Pluto that we've been working on. Let's say I had already entered in all 9 of these people. When I'm going in to work on each one of them, they're all here. And I would just go to the next quarter. Let's say it's in May and I'm now needing to report on Rocky. I just slide my bar over and then I start doing the reporting for Rocky in the next time period. So the DMHID and provider information is preserved, as well as each of your previous reports. And so you can just advance to the next quarter. You can advance to the next quarter to enter in, additional information for Rocky. Adam asked a question about pre-vocational allows unpaid work experience, likewise career planning, based on how the event is billed. I'm assuming this is how it should be reported, and that's correct. I mean, if you have an individual who's at a job site, doing an unpaid experience, that would be reported under whichever service you're billing it under. So if you're working under pre-vocational, you'd be doing the pre-vocational report. If it's being done under career planning, you'd be doing it under the career planning report. If a person's got both pre-vocational and career planning, obviously you can't be billing both services for the same unit of time. In that instance, I mean, you would be reporting it under whichever procedure code or service you're billing that activity. Bretton asked the question, if the individual chooses another provider and ends the service, you would likely choose that were services completed and successfully finished service. What you would do is say that services were completed and no, they did not successfully complete them, because for your agency, they did end the service, they did not successfully complete it. You would still go through and get paid. But if they now moved to another provider agency, that provider would be completing it differently, because they would be indicating that the person's still receiving the service. So it is possible that if someone were to change providers in the middle of a quarter, that both providers could be getting paid for their own respective reporting. There's a question on, do TCM entities get a notification and copy of this information? The answer to that's no. This is just information that's collected for the purposes of pay for reporting, that each entry is able to be saved and printed as a PDF. And so if a provider wanted to share that information with their support coordinator, I personally think it'd be good practice to save a lot of that as a PDF and send it, because I think there's a lot of information, and that's the type of information that should already be being communicated as part of ongoing progress reports. Brenda asks, are we doing value-based for support employment? Yes, we went through and did the pay for reporting examples for people doing support employment service. Down the road, as we collect all this information, we do anticipate having future incentive payments where anybody who's employed, that there will be particular enhanced payments that would be available for those individuals. See, Cassie asked the question on the date range. It's how long it took to complete the 4 CBAs. So her question, let me bring that up. Sorry, it's just taking me a second to bring it up. So her question is specific to, is this field here the date range in which the individual completed the service, or just the number of days, and it is just the number of days. So so it would be the number of actual days of which the service was delivered. So if someone did 4 different events, so they went to 4 different community-based assessment sites, it's the cumulative days that they were actually in that activity. So those 22 days may have occurred across 45 calendar days, but it's just the number of days which they actually did the community-based assessment. So you have the number of events, the number of days that that event was completed on, or those events were completed on, but it's not inclusive of calendar days when the person wasn't actually receiving the service. So it would be just the actual days of where billing occurred across those 4 sites. And hopefully that clarifies that question. Another excellent question. Does it matter if the question about thresholds, if those go up and down? There is no issue with that. We all have ups and downs in our lives. And so an individual one quarter may have been at one level of skill demonstration, and the next quarter, they may have regressed. That's fine. Again, we're not making any qualitative judgment on where those thresholds are at. It's just letting us know how an individual is progressing. And it really serves as justification as to why you would continue to need services. But let's say we get 2 years worth of data. What that's going to let us know is over time, how many individuals had quarters where maybe they backslid, on a skill or development. And so again, knowing whether someone's going up and down with those thresholds is all good information because it's going to enable us to have a better analysis of service utilization. So Nathan asked a question of, are there other webinars to show all the other VBPs? The answer is yes. The next webinar is on, let's see here. I can get to it. Kat, do you happen to know off the top of your head for the other one?
Give me 1 second. I believe it's January 10th, but just give me a minute.
It is January 10th at 11 o'clock. And I will put future webinar links here in the chat box to everybody so you can see when those are. There will be a separate one for tiered supports. And then all of the other value-based incentives are done in the same webinar, which is the next one on that is January 10th. So yes, Britton, your question. So the quarter one, so when we open this up January 17th, you could be going back and reporting July 1st through September 30th, quarter one data, as well as quarter two data. When you're calculating cumulative units, it would be the cumulative units that have been delivered, not just in that quarter, but any prior quarter. And so if individuals did have units of service prior to July 1st, you would go back and add just all the units that they've ever received in that particular service. And if we need to provide additional clarification, you're welcome to email me or call me. I'm putting my email chat box. My direct line number. So my email and direct line number is in the chat box if there are any additional questions. We'll also do a question and answer document that will be made available. And then, as I noted, we'll also be doing a crosswalk for each of those areas also. We've put notes within the reports to help inform people how to answer those questions. But we know that some of the other areas about the activities, there may be some questions. So we definitely want to go back and make sure everybody's operating from the same operational definitions. If inaccurate data gets submitted, is there a way to update the data? Adam, I'm going to put that on our FAQ list because I think there is the ability to update it within the reporting period. I'm not for sure if we get past the reporting period, if we would allow you to go back and update that. So that's something we will need to check on. And then Brenton, for your question on if you have someone who's been getting supported employment for 10 years, do we go back 10 years worth of data? If that person's been on that same job, if that person's been on the same job for 10 years and getting support employment services for 10 years, I'm not for sure that you would ever be able to go back and capture all that data. So let me take a note on that, and we'll give further guidance on how far to go back on that. That's honestly an example I didn't think of. I didn't draw an assumption that someone could be getting a waiver funded service for 10 years and any one of the employment services. So I'll need to think about that. Of what we would go back to. All right. I don't see any other questions, and we are about 8 minutes early. So if there are other questions, or if you'd like to view this again, we will be reprising this on the 12th, which is next Thursday at 11 o'clock. And if there are questions, once you get registered into RedCap, you're always welcome to email me. And we will also have a help desk address for people also as you're completing the reports. All right. Thank you guys very much.